So thank you for coming today. As the end of the year is here, most of you are traveling. So I'm very glad to see a number of faces here in the audience, physically as well as online. So I know both Simone and Datuk Arif for quite some time. Simone, not really quite some time, but we spent enough time on stage. So as I mentioned to Ruzi earlier, this is going to be a bit unorthodox. I cannot behave, so I'm sorry if I'm going to annoy half the audience today. And also the panelists, by the way. So we'll start with this. So digitization. So to introduce you a bit to what both Datuk Arif and Simone does, on top of what I think Ruzi mentioned is. So Datuk Arif transformed quite a bit of Petronas's, I guess, vision into being digital over the past, I think, 5-6 years. And Simone is a founder of a startup in 1999, and we had this conversation earlier, raised close to 2 million USD in 1999. So she's been around the block. She knows at the age of, I think, 28, 29 at the time, right? You raised that kind of capital in a time where people didn't even know how to do cap tables or preference shares. And you went through a time when even VCs were a very alien word. So we'll start with this. So now that I've set the stage, I'll go with Datuk Arif first, because of course Petronas, big company must start first back then, right? So Petronas is a culture that is defined in and of itself by the fact that Petronas is Petronas. It's the largest company in Malaysia by far. When you decided to change Petronas from within, it required not just a mindset change, but a gravitational shift in terms of how processes are done, because you're going to go against the grain and people won't be comfortable with change. Just to quote what Ruzi said earlier, is something that I guess they didn't want to build windmills. How did you even get that started? And I'm sure it was a challenge, right? So if you could share with the audience.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for having me to be part of the panel. I mean, when I look around, all the youngsters, I'm not quite in the same league, you know. So that's why the red shoe, just to make, feels like a bit young, you know. But I guess when I took over from Tan Sri Wanzo as the head of downstream in 2015. Now, my background, I'm an instrument engineer. When I've dealt with data, day one, I started work. No, there's a lot of this thing talks about industrial 4.0, it's going to be disruptive, but nobody actually felt it yet at that point of time, right? So people are talking about what's digital, what's industrial revolution they're talking about. So I do read and understand what really it means, because what is the impact it's going to be to the business? So when we talk about digital at that time, I had my leadership team. So I actually get them to go to Singapore, experience it so that they understand what's the power behind if you can really utilize data to get that insights and actually get to make better and faster decisions. Because talking about things, you will not be able to get it. You got to excite people. So the first thing was to excite my leadership team so that we all can speak same language. Because today, I think a lot of people talk about digitalization and things like that, but I think they most got it wrong. It's not IT. It's not getting things in digital format. This is really a business thing, and the CEO typically is a stumbling block. Not the digital guy, not the IT guy. It's the mindset of the leader not owning this as part of the business strategy. So once the leader embraced it and become part of the conversation of the top team, then you align, because the people only do and what they see the leader do, not what the leader say, right? So you must be saying and speaking same language. So that's kind of the first thing. Then obviously, it cannot be just a vision. It's something you got to actually change. You got to actually put things in place so that change will happen, and it has to be deliberate. So a company that's been organized, from the upstream to the downstream. Upstream is very much trying to get, safe asset utilization, finding more oil, getting extracted at the cheapest cost. As you go further downstream, it's more about the changing of the customer behavior and societal value. Then ESG came in. People are saying, don't buy fuel, right? So then it's all about perspective. You know, just because how your history got you there, you got to see where the trends are heading. And are you sure you're going to be prepared for the disruption? So a couple of things I formed, the digital team is called D3, Downstream Digital Disruptor. Is there things we can do to disrupt ourselves? But again, how do you change the whole thinking around this? So I work with AWS. We came up with a program called Innovation Engine. Innovation Engine uses the methodology of working backwards. AWS, I mean, people can Google and look for books about, how do you actually do customer validation? How do you actually do solution validation and business validation? Because when people say they really understand the customers, they don't. A lot of things, solution that people created, are not necessarily good for customers, even HR packages. They say it's for the employee, it's actually for the HR people who then get their life to be better. All right. So what insights? How do you make people, for example, simple things like, why must people apply for leave? Why is there a need? What do people need to claim? I mean, so in the digital world, a lot of things you can do beyond what's in the traditional world. You can, so to get that going, so we come up with a program called Innovation Engine. And we get the board, the senior management, the top 500 of PETRONAS to actually attend this. The top management be 4 days, the others about 8 days, and hoping to actually get this to become the new language. Because once you get a new language, hopefully it changes the way you think. And then we also did what we call citizen analytics that democratized Power BI, machine learning, so everybody get access to it, they got trained. We have switched doing online your own apps on a lot of these things. So it's a journey, and it's still a journey. Now with our new, I mean, when I said we means PETRONAS, and it's still kind of in that zone. So anyway, the Leadership Center PETRONAS baru siap is ready now. The main program will be about Innovation Engine. So transforming that. The last piece, I guess, before I guess pass to Simone, is this whole concept of empowerment. Because innovation, or people talk a lot on innovation, but digital. But how many actually are able to organize in such a way you actually do empower and get comfortable with empowerment? There's a concept called, your hands off, but eyes on, right? How far do you stretch that concept to the point that people do feel empowered and they're safe to do things? Otherwise, no one will change. So it's still a journey. We can talk later on, things that still, I guess, works in progress. But I'm happy to see, the Leadership Center, the sustainability thing, the team are now speaking that language, and it's right across to the board.
And I think that's what, as you mentioned, I think we discussed this with Simone earlier, it requires a huge top-down effort for something of this gargantuan change to happen. And I think we'll move on a bit in terms of what you said earlier, in terms of empowering. You have been a founder for most of your years. I think there's no choice but to empower your team, because your team usually starts small. You don't have the access to 30,000 employees, clearly. So how does that work? As building your business and at the same time empowering your employees, making sure you have eyes on the prize, raising enough capital to make sure you can pay salaries at the month. This is the entrepreneur dilemma. And at the same time, as you mentioned, digitizing a business that is highly regulated in a space that 20 years ago, the only thing we had back then was dial-up, where it was 15.5 kilobyte. I think I got it right? And you were doing this way before we had even broadband. What made you decide to do this in 1999?
Well, I'm staring at the poster in front of me, and what struck me is the words thought inspire. And I thought I'd start with a story today. When was the last time you looked at a blank piece of paper, or you looked at something that you walked by and you said to yourself, why can't this be better? Or why didn't someone not invent this? Or why is it this way? And if I think that thought has entered your mind, I would have resonated that, because that was the birth of, I think, where I thought, again, that's a good word, that I could create something that would be very meaningful in the market. And, you know, I'm not a charitable person by nature. It's not like I'm promoting, you know, going out and do community service. I'm not saying that, but I'm not like a Steve Jobs, I want to change the world in my garage type. I came from fairly, you know, professional parents. My dad is a Colombo scholar and a university professor of mathematics. And I came from a third generation of being in the drug business, because my grandmother, those days we hailed from Penang, and she opened a drugstore in Penang, very old drugstore. She's not educated at all. She came and she thought it was a good idea to trade medicines for people that actually came from China. They would buy medicines and send back to their hometown. So coming back to that thought, and I think when I started my first company in 1999, which was a baby then, by the way, not 20, baby, I was a baby. There were 5 key things that I think I would like to share today, which still is true today to our team, the partnerships that we have. The first is we worked on basic truths of the business. So we looked at the business and we said, what is the main problem we have in Malaysia? Number one, there is literally a monopoly of drugs. You can't get drugs. When I say drugs, means medication, prescribed medication. I'm not talking about all those things that, you know, swim into the, you know, into Malaysia lah, and your CBDs and all that, right? I'm talking about what we term in the industry regulated by the Poisons Act 1952, which is the Poisons Act B, classified Bs and Cs, which is prescription and can be sold with a pharmacist. So this is the kind of market that we have. So in terms of your idea of the total addressable market, you might say, oh, that's very narrow because that's only Malaysia, and how much can there be? I'll tell you, 10 billion ringgit. 10 billion ringgit is our total addressable market. By the way, the government buys about close to 55% of it, right? But pharmacies, which is our market, is 38% of the whole distribution channel. So the basic truth of our business is that you can't change the monopoly simply because there's only one way the drugs can move in the market. Now, when I say truth, that means what I hold to believe. It's very different from fact, because your truth may be very different from my truth, and very different from yours, right? So my truth was that, okay, monopoly. So what can we do with that? Because I see 32 million Malaysians. A lot of them are not accessing good healthcare services, number one, but there's also an opportunity to bring pharmacies and pharmacies up to the forefront. I'm not talking about your health and beauty stores. I'm talking about the real professional services of a pharmacist. When you approach a person down the street now and they say, what does a pharmacy do? Tak tahu, they draw the hair dye and the Watsons. No, in a lot of countries in the world, a pharmacist is a healthcare professional that complements the doctor and all the other allied health professionals to deliver very good services. And this is largely unknown in Malaysia, right? So the basic truth is pharmacists are at the back of shop, right? And those days, my mom, by the way, her registration number for pharmacy is maybe like 400. I think now it's 15,000 or something. She's 400. So she's one of the founding pharmacists then. And she said to me, you know, we are in a desperate state because, you know, no one knows about pharmacists, you know. If you can't qualify as a doctor, you become a pharmacist, that kind of thing, right? Those days, right?
No offense to doctors in the audience, by the way.
Sorry, I know there are doctors here, but, you know, those days, Guardian, you know, I know Mrs. Helen Au, I call her auntie, right? She was one of the founders of Guardian and she sold out to Dairy Farm, but we're talking about that kind of market. So basic truths. Second thing is what can be innovated, because we didn't have an innovation department. We didn't have a structure, leadership. We just had me, myself, and I, and maybe another person around the coffee table going, okay, what can change? And actually, what can you change? Datuk brought out without money. I can tell you a lot. I say that again a lot. And if you sit here today and you think that you need gazillion dollars to change the world, you don't. I know, what was that? Margin times volume is scale, right?
You remembered it. Wow,
Yes.
is that correct?
Margin
Datuk.
times volume is scale, yeah. Datuk, correct?
I mean, to me, all business is about margin and volume. That's profits.
Okay,
right? I mean,
good. Hold that thought, margin and volume. But I can tell you there's a ripple effect. Margin times volume is scale, but if you do not own that scale, it's also change, correct? Okay, so we agree on one thing. So that's the second thing I wanted to say, which is basically choose the innovation. The third thing is what we did was I made it an obsession. And when I said I made it an obsession, I lived and breathed the business model. I woke up and I said, how can I do this better? What do I need? Who do I need to call? I don't know, Datuk, I see him on LinkedIn, I try and get his secretary, let's say lah, or I try to get that CEO of that company, I call, secretary, call everything. I try and get to all the people that can enable this obsession of mine. That's the third point. Then having enabled the obsession, I realized that having a thought will not give me the scale. It has to be execution and people, like you said. So how do I empower other people? You don't need, again, my personal view is I didn't need to employ 3,000 people to do that, but I can enable the market to do this. And how do I do that? Well, we do it in partnerships. It is very existent today that we have partnerships in Tigas. We partner with everyone. And the fact that Tigas only focuses on a very thin layer of the business model that makes money, whereas we allow our partners to be very big in the front end, and that, to our mind, is scale. So the fourth point is friction. How do we remove? I think you mentioned friction in your sharing. We figure out how to execute that better, because Datuk is right. We need to capture margins in order to make money. There has to be enough margins. And if you are in a low margin business, you better execute the hell out of your business model, correct? You're not going to end up with anything, like you said, right? They're not with anything. You know, the net profit of every pharmacy, you know what it is? 3%. You'll be lucky if you can get 3%. The margins in pharmacy is average, maybe it's nuggets, I don't know, right? You'll be lucky you get 20 to 25%. Even 25%, I'm awed in a retail pharmacies. The net is 3. How you survive on that? What kind of scale are you talking about? That's why they're opening hundreds. But how many hundreds are you making money? 40% of the stores are making money. Now, is that a business model? You decide. And the fifth thing I was going to talk about is speak from emotion. Because today, if I can empower you to do something with your life, that's scale in my mind. And if I can influence you to be my partner and work together, I capture a small part of what we do together, that's scale in my mind. And I do not need to earn a gazillion dollars to effect this change. So I'm a Kuchi rat lah, with big dreams. But actually, Kuchi rats with big dreams are the people that actually change the world.
I can get the mic back now. No, but I think I agree. That's what Steve Jobs said, right? You can vilify them, you can ignore them, but you can't ignore the change makers. Crazy people, right? The crazy ones. And I think I think both of you did something crazy. Datuk Arif, literally, I think what you did in PETRONAS, I think most people would thought you were at the very least pushing the envelope of what people who are comfortable earning a living anyway. Even if you didn't enact change, the people in PETRONAS would have been happy to do what they were doing. You basically rocked the boat. How was it to enact that change, and how were they accepting of that change despite their salaries not changing?
I mean, sometimes in organization, what is a leader, right? Sometimes you're not careful. The bosses are doing the next level's job, the next guy is doing the next level's job. So whose job is it to actually be doing? Looking ahead and rally the team to believe what's coming, right? And that's the leader's job. And that's typically where, rightfully, why they get paid to do that job. Otherwise, you're just managing a company. So now, you like it or not, the digital disruption will happen, whether you're ready or not ready, right? Because you're already seeing signs of people wanting to disrupt either the supply chain, because really at the end of the day, business are quite simple. I mean, you make something, you sell, somebody buy, right? But the chain is what costs. You add on costs along the way. And in the brick and mortar world, you got restriction in reach. So if you understand then what really are the pain point and the drive, of course, at that point, ESG, again, right? The whole about not using fossil fuel ever, whether that will happen or not, like it or not, that market will be disrupted. So I think that's why it's very important at that point that to really have a lot of conversation around it. And I think big companies, sometimes they leave that conversation as a head of their CDO, and they want to attend a lot of these things. Sometimes it's the CDO, not the CEO. And the CEO sometimes are also not updated in their knowledge base to what this thing is all about to start with. But it's a real key component to, so it's not an enabler. It's something that's going to bite you and you will not be able to respond, right? Once it gets disrupted. I mean, if you look at around, CASM, a lot of it is all started with a pain point, either personal, right? Or something that they observe. And this is very, very critical for those who, I started also a program called Seed Lab. Seed Lab started because there are bright people who don't have platforms. Also, they don't know how to set things up. So together with TCS, we came up with Seed Lab. We took about 50 people trying to solve issues related to unemployment, health, like mental health. Now we're on cohort 2. So we teach them, how do you go about doing this? The challenge about entrepreneur is funding. As they get a great idea, how do they live day to day as they pursue that idea, right? So, and access. How do they speak, as you said, how do they go and knock on the door to CIMB, to PETRONAS, to come and listen to them? This is where a big company can open those doors. And that's what we did. And then, for example, at the Food Lab venture, they can sell at Mesra store at that point. So they don't have to worry about market, right? They don't have to worry about in the day-to-day, at least salary for 1.5 years. So I think whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a leader of a big enterprise, seeing, updating your knowledge and pursuing it, still the same. Your passion about the people, your passion about the business, and along the way, where people normally fail is there will be blocks, there will be roadblocks, and people starts to go around the roadblock, but they didn't come back. They pergi away from the roadblock, and they didn't come back, right? So I think it's very important to stay the course. Proven is here. We started Settle in Dagangan.
How many of you know Settle? Wow, look at that. Look at what you've given.
But when we started Settle, the idea was, we know the retail business will be disrupted. So what's next how do we prepare? So we go and do everything. Everybody does this, like design thinking and all these things. But really identifying the pain point. We did an ethnography study ethnography is where you actually go with the individual in their car, soccer mom, taxi driver, and observe their life. I mean, if you want to know a lion, you go to the jungle lah, tak pergi zoo kan. So we did an ethno, and we identify their pain point. Now, really at the end of the day, we say, how do we make people's life at that point seamless and frictionless and anchor on that point? Now, frictionless and seamless, right, has to be then an obsession, right? Now, everything has to, now it will open up a whole brand new of disruption that you can go for. So if you're going to have to be leading the market through making people's life seamless and frictionless, right? You really must understand the behavior of the customer. And the technology stack is a given. I mean, whether you're a big organization or small, you got to have the brilliant people to come up with a solution. Right? But again, staying the course and things and I think that the roadblocks are good, because then it determines whether you really want it bad enough. And then if you do manage to break through that, then you have reason to celebrate. So a journey, whether startup or corporate, you need this. Otherwise, you will give up halfway. That's why I think, I mean, the cheering on and believing that you're making progress and celebrating it sometimes play a bigger role than the actual meetings and everything else. And these are things that I think are small, but if you don't do it, you're going to burn out.
Which I guess brings me neatly to Simone, because see, so he's got a few thousand people to cheer with him. At the beginning, you probably have 5 or maybe less. So how do you keep yourself motivated when you're going through the building blocks of a business prior to reaching scale? Because we'll touch scale in a bit. But prior to reaching scale, how do you keep yourself, as exactly what Datuk Arif mentioned, staying the course?
So in the early days when I raised seed capital, I raised, correct, $2.5 million US in those days, and was a part of the whole journey of, because I had a background of accompanying the then Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad to US to look at MSc and all that, because I was a lawyer by then, doing lawyering job or legal contracts. I saw the fact that you had to be really big in order to make an impact, yes. But when we started just as a small company, just doing wholesale of drugs then, which is the idea to bring about change in the community pharmacies, we had so many variables. The first variable we had was our investors. Luckily, they provided us some credibility in terms of fundings to be able to open the accounts to actually buy those drugs, because in our trade, Zulik and distributors will not deal with you if you don't have the necessary capital invested, and they need to see all the records, and we were nobody. So they provided that letter, they provided that capitalization in the company. But to be very, very honest and authentic, it is a lonely journey. It is a lonely journey because everyone you meet either laughs at you, calls you crazy, mainly laughing. A lot of people laugh, but you know, I learned to laugh with people now, so it's okay. I enjoy myself actually laughing at myself. I think the sharing is, you really need to be a person that says to yourself, it really doesn't matter because it's an obsession. And I know some people come and like, hey, let it go lah, 20 years lah, you've been doing the same thing lah. I don't think you get scale lah, you know. Maybe it's time to close it down or let it go. I mean, there are many times along the way that, you know, an ordinary entrepreneur like myself, I remember 25th of every month, I would be shivering there because you need to make payroll. There have been circumstances where I use my own credit card to make payroll. I don't know if this actually resonates with people, but it does with me. I pay all my employees first. You cannot owe the, EPF, SOXO, all that. And I think along the way, we forget as entrepreneurs, we are actually taking care of people. We're actually enabling other people's lives. We kind of think to ourselves, oh my God, we can't be doing this, right? We have to pay all these people. But along the way, in the many years that people work with me, for me, we provide food on the table for them. We don't realize the impact that we've just going along this journey. So how do we keep ourselves motivated? I think the important thing is the mindset is 100%. Because if we are so obsessed with this vision to implement it, we kind of attract the right people along the way. Of course, we also attract the wrong people, but through experience, we need to discount all these people, right? So, the brickbats, the people that hurl at you, the people that put banana skin in front of you to make you fail a lot, okay, a lot. Okay, let me tell you. You know what I'm talking about, okay? Let's be real, my good friend always says, Simone, be real, just be real. I said, yeah, okay, I'll be real today. So this is what happens in a business. So how do you, right? And mind you, I'm a woman, I'm a mother of 3. Okay, I'm not superwoman, but I have to juggle family also, okay? And then there's a lot of guilt with that. I mean, child gets sick, that's me, okay? No butter in the fridge, that's me also, okay? No butter, we got no butter, buy butter. Let's be real, okay? 24 hours in a day, right? So the mental, and which is why I believe that this forum is very, very good, because those days, I felt so lonely, really lonely. I can't tell this to people, that I can't make payroll. You have to go out there and say, oh, I know the answer. Then you go say, oh, crap, what do I know? I don't know. Just do first. And often I go into a room and just make a decision. And I tell myself, it's better I make a decision than no decision. And even if I think that decision, I don't really know if that's the right decision, I have to stand there and say, yeah, that's we're going forward, Then you go in the room and cry. But I think this is the real thing. So to answer your question, how? I think you just need to empower yourself all the time with real good people around you. Surround yourself with A-class people that cheer you on. May not have people who work with me or for me, but, very close group of people, organizations like this or, where I belong to that cheer you on, that share similar stories. And also resign to the fact that there is actually no failure in your life, because it's just feedback. You just learn from not doing that thing after failing. So the thing that capital buys you is room to make errors. Literally, that's it. To me, that's it. Capital buys you that time to fail and learn. But if you go through like 50 years of doing a business and raising so much capital, you don't learn anything, to me, that's not a journey. So I don't think experience is about the number of years in the trade. I think experience is about learning about these things in the journey. And Datuk, you're right, it's a journey. It's a journey for everybody. So I just go along this path that I have, and I'm blessed in a lot of ways. Timing is everything. Sometimes luck, you and don't discount luck, please. I mean, like, you do everything right, but the timing is not right. Too bad, try again, try something else. I don't know. If it's an obsession for me, it's just another way of doing something. So I don't know if this resonates. I mean, I like to speak a lot about the mental focus an entrepreneur has. All this funding CIMB whatever, and you can get Google, and then you can go. But I think when it's the most important thing for an entrepreneur is to look inside. The heart and the mind must be aligned. So what are you trying to achieve? You want to earn $1 gazillion selling some company? Yeah, that's your goal. Go for it. But for the people that actually want to create something that's meaningful, it doesn't need to be big. I'm coaching entrepreneurs that have revenues of 800,000, 1 million, and they're profitable. So what? So what? So what if they like doing it and they bring change to their communities? What's wrong with that? And they're profitable and they enable others. They don't need to be the next Google of the world or Amazon. They just need to do something good in their communities. That's what our country needs, by the way. Sorry, not going into politics also. Yeah, but if there's enough of us in the business doing this, can you imagine what this country will be? If we empower and inspire other people and lift people up instead of putting banana skin in front of them, can you imagine how many entrepreneurs will grow together with big companies like Datuk's company, all that partnership? Yeah, but don't think people are so authentic to do that now,
And then you're exactly on time because this is the burning questions. So I've been told that we are supposed to open the floor for 10 minutes for anyone in the audience to ask a burning question. Because if you don't, I'm going to ask the burning questions. So the floor is yours. If you have any burning questions to ask to Datuk Arif or Simone, you have 10 minutes. Just raise your hand and then you can walk to the mic. Okay, gentleman in the batik shirt, you can pick a mic near you.
Thanks very much. It's not a batik shirt, but yeah, it's still a shirt.
Close enough.
Yeah. Datuk Arif and Simone, thanks for taking the time. My name is Ming. I run Epic Startups. We are a startup venture builder. I got a question for both of you guys and it relates back to Simone's question on entrepreneur mental. So, and this applies to both you guys, right? What do you guys think about entrepreneurs in corporate firms? So your intrapreneurs in they have these big corporate firms and they hire the entrepreneurs, right? The theory is that, will you say an entrepreneur that doesn't go through hardships, that has the babying support of a big corporate, that the mental is not strong enough and the moment they would break? Or will you say that entrepreneurs that get the support, so is it a double-edged sword to get support? Because it makes them soft and they don't fight, they have less mental toughness, or, what's the theory on that from corporate firms and also someone from the outside, just fighting out there? Thanks.
I don't think it's a function, thank you for that question. I don't think it's a function of whether big companies take entrepreneurs. If you so be it, I have a joint venture with a large conglomerate in Malaysia. I won't name which, but basically I went in there, they had a corporate structure. I didn't get employed by them, but I worked in hand because my shareholder is their common founder. I got to see the structure of corporate, and I really think it's what you want as an entrepreneur. You want to join a large corporate for the support and be within the environment of this robustness or capital, or they nurture you. Then I think due diligence needs to be done with the kind of people you want to align with. I mean, is that a culture of innovation? Do they provide you the things that you want? And if yes, the answer is yes, then by all means, you're an entrepreneur. I don't think we should be focusing on the response to the external. I'm talking about the internal irregardless. So if my internal is that I want to be big and I want to align myself to the corporate, and this is one way forward, and I'm very happy with the culture, then by all means, I think that's very empowering. So I don't think the external affects me, more so the clarity and the opportunity at large. So that's what I think about the intrapreneurship. I know a lot of companies do that, by the way, intrapreneurship.
I think we're trying to figure out what's ideal. Let's be real. Nothing is ideal. Even if we get married, who you think you get married to in the beginning, they change over time, right? And you have to change over time and make sure. So the point is this, right? It's something you're going to work on to make it a success if you believe in the cause. So it's a relationship. So whether you're an entrepreneur that then get into a big company has a lot of rules. The entrepreneur will feel stifled, right? Because they come from a different kind of school, and there are bureaucracy, there are hierarchy, and there are big governing system. But at the same time, they have lots of money. They can enable you amazingly, right? When I was doing my MBA, we had a session with Jack Welch. People asked Jack Welch, "You're so big, you're so slow. How can you win?" Jack Welch's answer was, a lot of small companies try to buy one and trying to work out the synergy to come out with the value. I buy 100. 30 makes it, and it covers for the 70 that don't make it. So that's the strength of big organization. They can give you access to a lot of things. Now, you got to decide, what is it that you're trying to achieve at the end of the day, whether it's going to be something that will enable you and you can live with the setback. A lot of companies are also trying to come up with this corporate entrepreneur. The guy who started Zoom, they were in WebEx. They were in Cisco. Cisco had a program. They left because they were doing things to support WebEx instead of the individual on Zoom. So I don't think that's a real right answer. First thing that I think really must be very clear in an entrepreneur mind is, what pain point are you really trying to resolve? And is those pain points real? Sometimes you believe they are real, but they are not real. So how do you understand whether the pain points are really real? You got to do a real sophisticated, I mean, not sophisticated, but you really got to understand whether it's interview, whether ethno, whatever it is, to understand the behavior. And if it's really a pain point, they would have already doing something to resolve it. And the solution that's available in the market are just not fulfilling the feature that they're required to resolve that particular pain point. Right? So for example, macam Kasem, the pain point is, that's what he said, right? It's tough to buy a car from a dealer and you just don't know whether they're telling you the truth and things like that. And people are trying very hard to try and do this. So it's just a real pain, and the market is so huge. But the solutioning then become not easy. Whether you can do the solutioning on your own, or you need the big corporate guy to be backing you up. You got to decide. You will have to sacrifice a few things when you go to big guys, like you watch in movies lah. Kan? So let's be real. I mean, the point is, nothing is ideal. This whole mindset thing is, one of the things when I choose a team, especially at leadership, it's not about what their background is. It's how hungry they are, how passionate they are on a cause. The funny thing about people who believe in a cause and believe, they do crazy things. I don't know how they find that energy. Just look at mothers. The thing that mothers, as you said, has to juggle. Guys cannot do this. Right? Because the level of care and passion about the children growth and all these things, putting things on the table, no guys can match it. Right? So that's why a lot of ladies has a lot more energy. Huh? I always say this lah, guys, kalau sakit sikit dah terbaring lah, Ladies sakit dengan koyok and all that, they can do still multiple things, right? So that's what passion will make you do. So if you start not having fun, and you start to get, then you got to really relook. Is that something that you're doing it for the right reason? And that's something you're passionate about? One of the key things that you should not be looking at is driven by money fast lah. Money is not bad because you need them. Money should be an outcome. Right? So, but I don't know whether I actually answered the question, but stop living in an ideal world, because everybody wants an ideal boss, ideal subordinate, ideal peers, ideal wife. Is everything got to be worked on, whether it's comms, whether the relationship, but have fun along the journey and stay the course.
Okay, I like that. So we can't have another question. There'll be a Q&A at the end of this so they can ask more questions. I will move back so you can turn the lights down. So I'm going to move on this. And Simone, I'm going to target you. I like what Datuk Arif said, compromise. I think that's the biggest thing that he sort of gave in that answer to the gentleman over there. Compromise is everything when it comes to building businesses. As you mentioned, managing stakeholders, which are partners who could potentially also be your competitors, right? In your years of building your business. I think this is more of, I realize, Ruzi, and so this is more of a TEDx moment. It's very intimate here. So what was the most challenging compromise you had to make running your business? The biggest regret you had?
I don't have regrets, but I don't know about this word compromise. I need to think about this very clearly. I had a very well-known private equity personality walk into my office many years ago when I was building the business. He saw my numbers and he said, literally told me, "Oh, this is nothing. It's too small. You can be 10x," or I forgot it was 50x. And then he said to me, I said, "Okay, tell me something that I can learn from. Maybe there's something that I've missed, and and I can give you a whole bunch of money." And that was very attractive. Then he asked me, "How stubborn are you, Simone?" I said, "Stubborn, what do you mean?" Oh, he said, "We want to change everything that you're doing to this." And he talked about a brand, he talked about products, he talked about changing the landscape of pharmacy into more of a retail, which I didn't believe in because I don't believe in the front of shop. I only believed in the back of shop that actually, in my mind, makes the money. Repeat prescriptions. If you then ask me, probably that was my intention. I didn't do the compromise. I said to him, "If you see this as stubbornness, then I am stubborn." And that was many years ago. It's 2005, I remember. He then left. He then left because he was a prolific investor in many businesses, and he could see that there was an opportunity, but in his mind, I didn't play ball. Yeah, maybe that's right. We all have our own crazy ideas that you see on obsessions. But I don't think, if you ask me, I've ever compromised in what I was doing. So maybe that's the bold statement I'll make. And I would tell you, in my business, there never needs to be one, because I don't see things as a compromise. If I negotiate with somebody, it's not a matter of me getting the better deal and you getting the shorter stick. It's what we can do together and how many options can we put on the table so that we can all win. So my primary belief is 1 + 1 is 3. I don't believe that if we have to partner, I have to lose and you have to win, or vice versa. I believe that what do I bring to the table? What do you bring to the table? Can we make it a lot bigger? So maybe as a round question, answer to that question, it may be a situation where you will partner with a corporate downline, but you build your business in so strong that a corporate actually needs the value that you provide. And maybe they need to so-called absorb you, you exit, yeah, or you work hand in hand with a corporate to provide that entrepreneurship mindset and culture that may be imbued in the company. I mean, that's an idea for you. It doesn't need to be a compromise. You win, I lose, or I need to toe your line, you need to toe my line. It doesn't need that to be that way. And I think a lot of the polarities of the world right now, how we think, is around that. Oh, you don't support me, you must be against me. Yeah. Why? That's politics, right? All the time. That's the narrative that's going out there. No, there are areas that we can all build together. And if you are very focus on delivering value, you will come to that solution in partnership with either maybe a big guy, maybe a global guy, maybe a small guy. Doesn't matter. But if you have that mindset when you go into partnerships, and by the way, I live on partnerships, which is why I'm speaking like this. My partnerships endure for many years. Not because we don't have disagreements. We agree to disagree. It's not that I agree with people, but we can find avenues to cooperate. and leverage on each other's strength. Big companies have a lot of strength, like Datuk said, capital, they got manpower, they can see things you cannot see. They've got the machinery, they've got risk management, people that calculate, all the data analytics that you don't have, maybe. And if you want that for your business, how do you then attract big companies to work with you? You don't need to position it as a seller or a compromise, Alin. It can be a corporation, right? It's a win-win. And by the way, as a small entrepreneur, you also lend a voice to the business. You say, look, I've tried this, right? And I know because I'm a hands-on entrepreneur, this doesn't work. Maybe I can teach your people, or maybe I can imbue this culture of ownership in your company. Take ownership of the project just like I own the company. So there's a lot of things that you can share with a large corporate that they don't actually have visibility or the capacity to do that, because big companies, like you say, bureaucratic, and they have structures. Yes, agreed. There has to be that way because they serve a different need. They have shareholders. My shareholder is only me and my big shareholder there. That's it. Me, I talk to him. He talk to me. That's it. But they've got so many institutional shareholders that they have to return. They have to actually stand there, return on investment, right? They have to justify that.
Okay, I'm gonna take that point, return on investment.
I think that's just a point. I think we shouldn't be, because compromise is seen to be a negative language. That somebody wins, somebody loses. Today is all about ecosystem, right? What does it take to be that everybody wins? So you need to be very objective about things. So sometimes, because it's a baby that you carry for a long time, you loved it, you've nurtured it, there's so much emotion that goes in, you miss to become objective about it. Then there's another thing, the cost. Why you do this? Because there's always, everybody, an entrepreneur has a story to how they start something. Right? All right. Well, the story is a good start that fuel you. But if you want to do something probably bigger, story is just not enough. So to be level-headed and be objective about things. The other thing is, when you speak the language, whether you're an entrepreneur, a corporate, you will see that you speak different, same words means different things. So learn the language of the people that you're going to be speaking with. Right? Sometimes you use a lot of jargons or things that the corporate guy may not even understand it, but they cannot tell you they couldn't understand it. Because they will look stupid because they're big corporate guys. Right? So the point is, understand that what does it take to make it? Be objective about it. If you happen to then get a chance to either investors, the corporate guy, the suppliers, really do your homework. Be super prepared. You think about Steve Jobs, when they go on stage, he doesn't rehearse so much before he goes on stage. Everybody does this. Remember this. In life, most of the time, you only get one shot. You screw it up, that's probably your one and only shot. Right? So if you get a chance at any touch point that you have, be very mindful, be very deliberate, over-prepare. Know your things very well. So a lot of times, both party needs to come to a term. You cannot come to a term if you don't understand each other. Right? And you cannot come to a term if one party going to lose. So my view is never take things for granted. Everything has to be deliberate and thought through and get good at it. Because it's a competition. If you really think about it, there's so much capital in the market today. Just looking for opportunities. But yet the entrepreneur says, I cannot get a piece of this. Right? And the guy who has the money says, I cannot find a good business to give this money to. So imagine, there's so much money, that the opportunity. And this guy says, I have so much thing I want to do, I cannot get access to the money. It's all about risk management. You know, I mean, if you think about in the startup world, 85% of startup don't make it. Only 15%. All right. So, like company like AWS is trying to bring the numbers higher. So they codify the way of innovation. Right? So they talk about lesson learned. You know, when AWS or Amazon, they introduce a phone, it will fail because the whole customer validation, that whole pain point was wrong. You know, your whole solutioning was wrong. So don't just do things because you're just excited about things. I always believe, learn, pick up books, associate yourself with someone that has done this. Find a mentor. Find a mentor that actually can take you to the next level, who can give you good advice. Because sometimes you find a wrong mentor, right? That screw you up big time, right? I mean, you want to make a lot of money, you go to a reminder that don't make money. Hey, you want to make money? Go and look for someone who has made a lot of money. Then it makes sense, right? So my point is, I don't think compromise is the need, right? You got to be objective. Nobody will strike a deal if one party lose.
To which the question I was about to ask earlier, which has slipped my mind now, was what you said earlier in terms of when you build a business at an early stage, you're not looking at profitability, you're looking at survivability. But when a corporate is building the business, they're looking at profitability from day one, right? And this is where I guess the dichotomy happens. And I guess from the small fishes out there, I mean, it's good. There are a lot of companies in Malaysia now that are working with smaller companies. I think PETRONAS did that as well. But the question that's burning through my mind, and it's back to you, Datuk Arif, is the fact that how do you then bring in entrepreneurs? And you mentioned Puven, which is a good one. Puven was my co-founder before, so he's an entrepreneur. He joined PETRONAS, and he's got PTSD now, right? So clearly, it's very pink, right? Very bright color. And the reason is because you're right. You put an entrepreneur in a very structured environment, they either conform or they ship out. And entrepreneurs are the best at this because they can bend to the situation. That's what entrepreneurs are. But how do you then change the mindset of what it is, the way you see companies being built today, which is to burn the cash because capital was very easy to get a couple of years ago, to then start with the mindset of, I've got to build a profitable company. How do you instill this? Because you have a best of both worlds, right? The PETRONAS people have been there all that while, and the ones like Puven that you brought in to build your new businesses.
Correct. Now, look at how big companies govern. They have their board, they got the management. And board governance typically depends on a certain level of spend, it will go to board. And the board clearly will have a shareholders to take care of. So they need to make sure risks are taken care of in whatever ventures you want to get in. Now, risks are being looked at very differently for different businesses and how things are. So looking at risk, it's not a single way of looking at it. So some companies like is in education by itself to how risk should be looked at. And some big corporations also ring fence so-called risk money or venture capital money. So this money will look at risk in a very different profile, and the gestation period will be different. So it's a ring fence money. And everybody along the line kind of know how the risk profile of this thing look like. Unfortunately, sometimes the one that manages this fund did not move away to the old way of managing that fund. So the treatment of that fund is the same mindset of the treatment of the other funds. That's where it then gets muddled up, right? So there is an allocated money, but you're putting the wrong lens for it. So corporate venture capital is a different animal than venture capital. Because sometimes the corporate venture capital is also looking for not just the 5 times, but how it back integrate to enable the other businesses, right? So again, you got to understand where the lens is coming up. So I don't think the big corporation don't understand that in the initial phase, the company will not make money, but they will also see the potential. But again, it's the risk appetite of this. How far the guy managing this fund are able to put his neck, right? And this is where things typically don't match up. So it's not the money is not there. It's not the company are not willing to give the money, but sometimes the one managing it is not using a new set of lens, and the rules of the game are not made very clear across the whole value chain, from the board and everything else. So what then does entrepreneur needs to do? Understand risk. As much as you're passionate to do things, life is not without risk. Quantify it. Make the big company understand how to see them, educate them, so that they can see it from your lens. So if we can see it from their lens, they know how to manage this risk, they will be comforted. Right? Because if you just go, oh, don't worry, I know this market, then you're gonna not get anything. Right? Again, understand the language and the mindset of, because the governing structure are very different. And these are not entrepreneurs. They earn a salary. If the higher they are, sometimes they need to safeguard their position to be safe. But it doesn't mean they're not doing anything that's really going to drive the company. Facilitate it. Help them to do your homework. Right? If you can say, oh, this guy should totally pakai lah, then you're just going in a wrong mindset to start with.